Good morning and welcome to Kayamba FM this Saturday, the 6th of August 2022. We have been planning to come live earlier than normal, but we sometimes get delayed a bit due to the time zone differences and making sure that all the plan and everything is set up properly for you to have a good and enjoyable program. Today, we'll not have many speakers because there are a few things going on, but I'm going to introduce a topic which our speakers next week will tackle. You have seen on the title, A Wealthy Nation Living in an Abject Poverty. South Sudan and our African neighbors, most of the African countries are very wealthy, but the majority of the people live in an abject poverty. Why should it happen like that? Why? Is it something that we should allow to occur? Why should we live in poverty when we have 100% of the land that is arable, that is fertile and ready for agriculture? When we have plenty of water, we have 12 million head of cattle. We have huge reserve of oil by our own standards compared to the populations. Why? Indeed, most of the African nations and in the third world countries are very rich. But the populace, the majority of people live in an abject poverty. According to Adam Smith, if you follow the Adam Smith thesis, before that, let's look at what Adam Smith said. In his inquiry into the wealth of the nations in 1776, he wrote what become a popular books, what set up the theory of the economics, the wealth of the nations. And he based his theory, his thesis, on three tenements. First, the central thesis of Smith in the wealth of the nation is that individual need to fulfill self-interest result in societal benefit. He called the force behind this fulfillment the invisible hand. Another theme in his book was the self-interest and the division of labor in an economy result in interdependencies that promote stability and prosperity through the market mechanism. Smith rejected the idea of the government interfering in the market activities, and he believed that government three functions should be to protect the national sovereignty, protect the borders, protect life, protect property. That is Adam Smith into the world of the nations. That the fulfillment of the self-interest of the individuals lead to the fulfillment of the societal need. In other words, when an individual go out there to start a small business, you will create an employment for himself. In the process of acquiring his own wealth, you would be employing more people to grow that business. And as you employ more people, an economic activity is generated. Taxes goes to the government. The living standard of the people around that economic activity improve. It emanates from the self-interest of an individual trying to do something for themselves that led to the life of others being impacted. Now, he also added, and we are talking to the wealth of the nation theory, just a summary. He also added that when the government allowed the free market to operate without interfering in individual businesses, it brings an equilibrium into the market because the government is a bad competitor. it can never compete because it is used law to wipe out the competitions. Because it is the authority. That the role of the government is to create stability, peace and tranquility, an environment that allows the individual to realize their own potential. Adam Smith has impacted the life and the theory of economics for over, I think, 300 years now. Since his thesis was published in 1776, almost about the same time of the American independence. Why is this very important? There are few lessons to be learned for a young nation and growing economies, like the nation of South Sudan. We have few lessons to learn. As a nation, we can learn a lot from Adam Smith. Please share the video. Share this video. It's going to be brief because I'm introducing the topic of economics. And we will deal with these topics next week because we'll have a number of our economists coming on board to discuss this topic. I will bring on board the economists because the FPD Institute program of Knowing Your Expert is an ongoing, and it is a program that we are pushing to ensure that our people learn something from our own local expert. The definition of expert is something that has eluded. Well, it has been taken lightly by many, but it is very serious things because it is the role of the expert, the technocrats, that transform the society, that transform the communities, that transform the economies. So, why is it important? We have just learned few lessons in the last couple of months. And number one lesson is to be learned from Sri Lanka. A government of Sri Lanka fall on the 20th of July, 2022. This was a democratically elected government, but it was removed by street protest. The public went onto the street to demonstrate. They went on to object and show a negative sentiment against the government policies. What removed the government in Sri Lanka was not by guns or by war. It was the economic and the suffering of the people. And this begs the question, why should our people live in an abject poverty when they are very wealthy? A South Sudanese man in a cattle camp with 50 to 68 of cattle is sitting on a lot of money, is very wealthy. And if the nation wealth is to be measured by many economic indicators, South Sudan was one placed as one of the rich nations, as wealthy. We will look at the economic indicators of the South Sudan in terms of per capita. For the last few years, the nation has slid into poverty due to war that is being waged across the nation. As we say on this platform, we try to teach what we know and interact and engage with the public. And please feel free to call in or to participate. And I will show the links. But just have a look at those numbers on the screens. I've just put out numbers there. This was an extract from the Department of Foreign Affairs in Australia because they keep the data. As a nation, Australia has interest to do trade with other countries within the region. So, Australia went in to measure since 2015, just a couple of months, just 2 years after the war. And it is indicated that if you look at per capita GDP, the gross domestic products and gross domestic product per capita, like if you take the wealth of the nation divided by the population of the country, which is 12 million South Sudanese, you see that South Sudan GDP was 15 billion in 2015, and it collapsed immediately. It collapsed, and by 2020, it sit around 4 billions. Why did it collapse? Because from 2015 to 2016, the war intensified, cities were ravaged. Because when the peace was signed in 2015, and this is critical, is very important. When the peace was signed between the warring parties, there was a confidence in the citizenry. The citizen of South Sudan became confident. The economic activities started. But then the activities around J1, when the war erupted among the bodyguards in 2016, the economy totally collapsed by all the measures. People may not realize this, but what is serving our nation is that our economy operates in silos. It is not linked like other economies. And this is where we want to discuss next week. But look at the gross domestic product per capita, per individuals. In 2015, if you take the wealth of South Sudan divided by the population by every single individual in South Sudan, it was $1,246 per person. And in 2016, it collapsed to 286. And in 2017, it reduced. And by 2020, it is $300 per head. Now, what does that tell you? We are accelerating toward a disaster. South Sudan is accelerating toward a disaster. It is so bad. It is something we have to be worried about. And it's something we have to encourage our government to look at. We have seen some reactionary economic policies being put forward. But as FED Institute, we believe we are people and economists that can help us to understand. And I will bring them on board next week. So I'm just introducing the topic. Why is it critical? And why is it so important? You will notice that countries which neglect their economic management in favor of managing the politics end up doing badly. In other words, you cannot have a strong system and you cannot govern harmoniously if the economic management, if the economic growth is so weak. And the failure to manage the economy has always led to the demise of kingdom. It is something recorded in history. Kingdoms have always grown and collapsed due to in line with the economic growth. China has become prominent in the modern politics, in the global arena now, because they have been building their economy for the last few decades. Since 1970, China has instituted policies that help the nation to grow, and as the wealth of the nation grow, as the individual are allowed to practice in the market, they create the wealth for themselves, for their families, for their local communities, and in that scenario, the wealth of the nation grow. Why is it concerning to me and to the members of FED Institute? Why the economy is very, very, very important. We have to be very cognizant of the fact that our country is at the crossroad at the moment. The last few years have been very difficult for South Sudan as a nation. Why? Because the country has been at war with itself. And as it fights itself, the economy decline. And if the economy decline, then it set the whole population to become the enemy of the states. Because people will always put back. The population would always push back. Let's learn a few things from Sri Lanka. We have learned that the government of Sri Lanka collapsed on the 20th of July, 2022. And now there is an interim president. What happened? Sri Lanka had been overborrowing to the point that it owned $51 billion to a foreign nations, foreign countries. And when the COVID-19 hit, the main sector of the economy collapsed, which was tourism. And after the tourism collapse, Sri Lanka cannot service its own debts. So the country ran out of reserve. So by the start of 2022, it had only $25 billion as it reserved in its national bank, central bank. And then, due to the lack of inflow of hard currency, because tourism has collapsed, the currency, the national currency collapsed by 80%. Inflation increased. And South Sudanese understand this very well because they have been dealing with inflation. We have seen the pound has been losing its value against dollar day by day. And that should worry any rational South Sudanese. So what happened? Sri Lanka ran out of money in June after 6 months of $25 billion in its reserve. The businesses tried to get, they ran of it to run the economy, the country. It went to the point that it was only 2.5 billion. That ran out by June 2022. There was nothing to supply hospital with medicine. There was no money to supply fuels. People could not afford the bare essential, the basic need. The currency had collapsed. So what happened? Riot erupted in the street of Colombo in Sri Lanka, the national capital. So it became chaotic. By July, the government of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa could not convene the public any longer. They cannot maintain law and order. The central function of the government collapsed because the whole population rised. So what happened then? The population demand a change in government, and the new president was installed to act on the interim basis. This implies that what led to the collapse of the government of President Rajapaksa was the economic mismanagement. And the economic mismanagement is something that should not be taken lightly. It is something that every South Sudanese should take seriously. So let's get some of our speakers to come on board to contribute on this topic. But think about it. What it mean? for a country when it run out of money, run the basic services of the nation. Please feel free to call in. Just let us know what you have in mind. Tell us, call in using those numbers. Call in, let us know. Call in, let us know. What does it mean for common South Sudanese? For East African? For ordinary citizen? When the currency has collapsed, when the nation ran out of money, law and order disappear out of the window because everything hinge on the economy. Everything hinge on the economy. Without proper economic growth, the nation is at risk and face the danger. The nation is at risk and face the danger. Please bear with me. I'm getting one of our speakers on board here to be with us, because what we need to demonstrate to you is that as a country, you could be wealthy at the same time, but still live in abject poverty when the wealth of the nation does not reach the population. That is what it means. And that is the intent of these topics. Now, we are preparing our speakers to come on board to join us. They can call in. You can call in if you like. We are here all the avenues of participating. We have shared some of the telephone numbers on the show. Just scroll on the video and you'll see them. And we will also share the link to participate. But we are waiting for the speaker here. So maybe I will play one or two songs. But the most important things here is having a system that is functioning and supporting its people. That is more important than anything else. And why should we take it seriously? Sometimes we raise alarm. The world is getting into a dangerous phase as we speak. The reason it worries us is that the world has become so uncertain to an extent that you don't know what will happen next. We have seen what Ukraine war has done to the budget allocation of the refugee in the Horn of Africa. And people should be very, very, very vigilant about these things. It is a time that we synthesize our population. We inform our people. 4.5 million South Sudanese, they live on food aids from World Food Program. But the World Food Program has reduced its budgets by cutting an aid to 1.7 million people across South Sudan. What does that mean to the population? It means that there is a disaster looming for the nation, and that's why the economics management is very important. A disaster is looming for South Sudan. The next few months are very critical for this country. are very critical for the nations. Now people think that why should they talk? So why do they just talk? Of course, it is ideas and thought that culminate into things. So if you don't listen to ideas and you don't want to pay attention to the thinking of people who have the information, then you will never change your status. Because anything that go out to become tangible in the physical world, it comes as ideas and thoughts. And that's why we should always pay attention to what we said here. I had demonstrated before our economy has declined over time. We are waiting for Dr. Nyalo Kuj, by the way. He's an economist. I had wanted Nyalo to come next week, but he's available now. He can join us. Dr. Nyalo Kuj is based in Canada and he's with Canadian Treasury, which is the equivalent of the what you call the Ministry of Revenue and Authority in the Finance. Each country call it differently. So in Australia, we call it the Treasury, the Department of Treasury. They are the engine of the economy in this country. It is where all the deep thinking is done. It is where all the economic policies are framed and given to the politicians to market. I don't know whether I'm not seeing any comment, but let me see whether I can see any comment. I think people may be commenting on the, but if you comment, I will see it. So feel free to let me know if I'm missing anything, any comments. I should be able to see it here, but I have not seen anything yet. No one has commented. But if you want to call in, let us know. What does live mean now? What is the impact? Lately, we have seen pound rising from 40,000 Sudanese pound per $100. It's like 400 pound per dollar to 600. It is a big jump. It is a 50% increase in inflation. It's actually 650. So it's more than 50% increase. In other words, the power of your pound is called the purchasing power drops. What does it mean for ordinary South Sudanese? If you call, you can have your say. Call on those numbers. The numbers are here. We'll show them to you. Call on any of these numbers. If you are in Australia, you can call +612 4022 9113 and you put the code 337316. If you call in, you will come straight to the station. And if you are in US or Canada, you can dial +1605 313 5425. If you are in Kenya or Uganda, the numbers are there to dial. If you are in Kenya, you can dial +254 2079 04343. If you are in Uganda, +256 20 1003. Last week, I was asked by one of the viewers, if you are in South Sudan, how can you participate? Well, you can call either Uganda or Kenya, or you can call into the studio following the link and remove your video if you don't want your face to be shown. So let me check with our guest if he's making it. Let me check with our guest if he will make it. But try to call to participate in this discussion. It's very critical. Let us know how it has impacted your life. Hello? Hello? Hello?
Hello.
Yes.
Yes, Jack, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you clearly. It is the number that has come, but introduce yourself.
This is Niall. This is Niall.
Oh, Dr. Niall, yes. Dr. Niall, welcome to the show. And it is a privilege to have you. I was planning to host you officially next week, so I was going to inform you today. So I was just introducing the topic, but it's good that you can touch briefly. Look, I was just introducing you to the audience, and I told the audience that Dr. Niall Kuch is an economist by profession. He had a bachelor's, master's, and PhD in economics, and he now works with the Canadian government in Ontario. That is the brief I can say. But Dr. Niall, can you introduce yourself? And let me, first, before you continue, I want to check with the audience if they are hearing you, but I will know if they are hearing you. So introduce yourself, Dr. Niall.
Well, Brother Jack, thank you for having me on the show today. First of all, allow me to commend you on the great show that you are having. It shows a great sense of patriotism, to find time, talk about things that are facing our country. So it's a great initiative from your side. Yes, as you said, my name is Niall Kuch. I live in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. Professionally, I'm a trained economist, and I work for the government of Canada at the moment. In terms of the area of specialization, I am an applied economist. So basically, what that means is I like getting data, looking at it using tools of economics and statistics to analyze data and make some predictions about, all sort of things. I look at a lot of topics concerning, the macroeconomics or even microeconomics. So I have broader set of interests in economics. So that's a brief summary of who I am. And yeah, so back to you.
Dr. Niall, good. Look, our program is always called Know Your Expert. And sometimes we, people who have done few things and have been practicing in our own various disciplines, sometimes we will assume that people know what we are talking about. Now, and because I would warn you, you will talk about this economic thing in South Sudan sometime next week. So that's what I wanted to invite you to lead this show, such that you can come people. But such that for people to make sense, can you tell us a bit what is micro and macro for the benefit of our audience? Because sometimes can they know what micro, is? I know it is a text. It could be an economic 101, but sometimes we assume we know it. Can you let them know exactly what is macro and micro briefly in a layman language? Absolutely. Talk as if you are talking to year 6,
absolutely.
To a 6 years old child.
So microeconomics. Exactly. So microeconomics is a field of economics that looks at individual economic agents. So basically, you can look at individual firms or businesses, and you can look at people, in isolation. That's essentially what microeconomics is about. Now, if you aggregate that, or if you scale that up to a region or a country or a continent, then you're talking about macroeconomics, right? So you have the whole economy. So, for example, in the context of South Sudan, at the micro level, you could be looking at, let's say we're looking at consumption here. So at the micro level, I'm interested in how much your consumption as Mr. Jack has gone up or has gone down, right? But then at the macro level, I'm interested in analyzing how much the consumption of the whole country has gone down or has gone up. So that entails adding up, the consumption level of everybody in South Sudan to arrive at the macro, variable that we are interested in. So in economics, macroeconomics deals with things like inflation, the GDP, or the gross domestic product of a country, the national fertility rate, the mortality rate, or the death rate in the country. So it's interested in figuring out what happens at the national level or at the regional level, for example, the East African community or Africa. That's macro. And micro is we interested at, people, individuals, and businesses in isolation, essentially. So that's the distinction between microeconomics and macroeconomics. And then there's another field of economics. It's called econometrics. Basically, it's applying statistics and mathematics to either macro or micro topics. So it's essentially a tool that allows you to, to analyze and make predictions about people, about businesses, about the whole economy. So hopefully, I've answered your question.
Yeah. And I think this is where people like me, who are data scientists, come and meet the economists at the econometrics, the data and statistical side of things. But look, I would not want to preempt your topic, but the reason I think FED Institute, because we have Forum for Peace and Development, and South Sudanese are focusing on peace and the extension of the term and things like that. But what has been missing and following from the learning from Sri Lanka is the discussion on the economy. And I think it is the one that any government and any sane person in the nation should be really, really concerned with. Because at the moment, the country is grappling with the runaway inflation. Inflation has run away. In the few weeks, I would say so. In what they will call a pre-market, but I don't know the real market. What measure the real market in South Sudan? The Central Bank of South Sudan, the Bank of South Sudan, lifted the exchange rate from $1 used to be 420 there to 650. Now, this is, or 605, I think, to be exact. That is according to the central bank. In what they call the blacks market, which I think is actually the real market, is what is measuring the real thing. Because that is where the consumer, the buyer, and the willing buyer and the willing seller meets, right? The demand. So I thought it's something concerning. So today, I thought we were just going to introduce it. And next week, I would want you, because I was going to reach out to you and a few of our economists within the FED Institute to prepare and open our eyes. Do we even measure? Do we even know how to measure our economic, the gross domestic product very well? That is the question. Because you have 12 million head of cattle roaming around, and you know the value of a cow. And the meat export, you know what it means in the market. We have social economic activities. In that sense, and the economy is deteriorating and is not part of the discussion. So what, as you mentioned, the micro and macro, what does it mean to ordinary man? And you know that the connotation, right? People have that connotation. When you study economics, people think, people associate economy with a kind of being miser or being stingy. Have you ever feel those things?
I always tell people whenever they mention being stingy and being an economist as synonymous, because I mean, let's say from where we come from,
Yep.
we have people in the cattle camp
Mm-hmm.
that are stingy, and they never studied economics. So
But I
being
stingy.
stingy has no, yes, people that are stingy and they live right in the rural areas, like or in the cattle camps, and they are not economists by profession.
Yes.
So being stingy is has, I mean, has no correlation with having studied economics. So in summary, economics is really looking at the resources that people have, and appreciating the fact that these resources are limited in nature,
Yep.
but then the needs of people or the needs of the economy, if you're
Mm-hmm.
looking if you're looking at it at the macro level, are insatiable. In other words, the needs are cannot be satisfied.
Yep.
So the goal of economics is to really figure out how do you optimize these resources, or how do you use them in a
Mm-hmm.
way that maximizes the we call it utility in economics, but
Yep.
in layman's words, we call it happiness. Call it happiness. So how do you use these limited resources to make people, as happy as they could ever be?
Mm-hmm.
That's all about economics. And sometimes it involves being stingy, right? So if it means not spending things on spending resources on things that are not important, so be it, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's economics.
Yep.
Now, coming to the topic that you alluded to earlier,
Mm.
the the problems that we have in South Sudan are um, we could call them a multifaceted uh, problem, because
Mm.
they have. I mean, there are a lot of elements that are working collectively to create the situation that we have right now. So there's the political side of things, and then
Mm-hmm.
there's the economic side of it, right? So on the economic side of things, that's you mentioned something that's happening in the currency market. So the
Yep.
South Sudanese pounds has been depreciating relative to other currencies in the
Yep.
past few days, right? And it's hard to look at that problem in isolation,
Mm-hmm.
because the other side, which is the political side of things, also feeds into the problem, right? So you could mention a lot of economic problems that are going on in the country, but we will not find uh, a conclusive solution to those problems if we do not solve the political side of things as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not a trained political scientist, so I will talk about the economic side of things.
Yep.
So what we have in South Sudan right now is it's a problem of lack of economic diversification.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, we are relying on a very tiny subset
Yep.
of our national economy,
Mm.
which is the oil sector right now. So the oil sector is our main source of foreign currency.
Yep.
So just to let our viewers be aware, um, currency is like any other commodity that you can think about. So people demand it, and the government supplies it. So basically, there's demand and supply forces involved.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the way your currency works is if you have exports, so you sell goods to other countries,
yep,
then people from other countries will be demanding your currency because they need your currency to buy the goods in your country and then export them to their countries.
yep,
Also, if you buy from other countries, so you are importing, then you will use your currency to buy the other country's currency.
mm-hmm.
And basically, depending on how much you buy from other countries or how much other countries buy from you, there's going to be some equilibrium or balance, and your exchange rate will be determined by that.
Yep.
Now, the problem that we have in South Sudan is we have a very limited set of exports.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not exporting enough. So our currency has no value outside our borders. Right? There's not a lot of people that are demanding our currency, or nobody wants to hold a South Sudanese pounds,
yep.
For other reasons other than being in South Sudan. So the moment you have that problem,
mm-hmm.
it's very hard to maintain a stable value for your currency, right? Because you are at the mercy of basically the countries where you import from.
Yep.
So what we have in South Sudan is importing a lot of goods from the neighbors, say Uganda, Kenya, Ethiopia, and North Sudan.
Mm.
So we are using our currency to buy their currency. In another way, we are strengthening their currency, and our currency is losing value because nobody is buying it. Nobody is demanding it. Yeah. Right. So that's one thing that is causing issues in our country.
Yeah.
And then
go on.
Of course, the other problem is the imbalance nature of the production capacity in the country. So I don't know the last time you were in South Sudan, but I was in Bor about a year ago, and what I saw was total lack of economic activity. So basically, what I mean is that we don't have a lot of activities that generate income locally, right? So there's not big businesses that are bringing in money. So we have high levels of inequality. So there are really few people with money, and a whole section or a huge chunk of the proportion, a huge chunk of the country does not have money at all. So it makes it harder, to generate, income or for example, to employ people. So, and the moment you have that, it also feeds into, what I mentioned earlier.
Yep.
Which is that affects the currency market, because if people have no money, then again businesses won't have money, and businesses will not export, and it is into the into the currency issue, right? So that's number one problem that we have in the country, the lack
we are
of export.
Look, Dr. Dr. Nyal, I think I want to stop you there. The reason is, look, what you have actually said is very critical. And before you came in, I had demonstrated, based on the data supply by the Australian Foreign Affairs, that someone is asking a question, but I will ask you. You will answer it, Dr. Nyal. Dr. Nyal, you are being asked, before I go on, this is one of our scientists, Majong Kurkany, is a geologist, is asking, can Dr. Nyal tell us the difference between the legal tender and the promissory note? South Sudan pound is a promissory note. Did you get the question? The question is, can Dr. Nial tell us the difference between the legal tender, which is the currency, and the promissory note? South Sudan is designated as South Sudan pound is a promissory note. You don't, yeah, either some few things you may, I don't know how it is designated into a promissory note and why it should not be legal tender. I don't know that at that time. I have not prepared for it, but just keep that. Do you think you can answer later on? And well, maybe next week you can answer it if you cannot answer it now, because if you don't have the legalities behind it, you can research it, because we will host you officially on the video next week. But that is the question. So what I was saying, back to the question, back to what I was saying, as you think on that, if you look at the average South Sudanese now, there is huge economic activity going on. And one thing which I've always believed, based on my studies in business management, okay? I'm not economist, but we have done some economics unit at a high level. The way the economy of South Sudan is, it is in silos. That is the conclusions I arrive at based on my observation. But I don't have the data to support how each sector is operating independently. And I say that is what is serving the country. Otherwise, would have been in big mess already. The people in the cattle camp are operating in their own economy, moving with their cattle, exchanging their
exactly.
people who are in the fishery sector, which has just gone, which has grown in a scale that I have not imagined after the flood. The fishery sector has just grown enormously for the last 2-3 years, and especially in the greater Upper Nile region. People who are in this subsistence farming. So everything is like isolated. It's only the folks in Juba around the pound and the businessmen who own the shop, who buy things outside, are the one really impacted directly. But everyone end up impacting anyway, because the economy, at the end of the day, people in the cattle camp will come and buy things. Now, based on that assertions and the way things are, how do you think now, in your own observation, where you look at it, the economy which is isolated, is the pound really the justification of things? You see, when everything goes up, it has a knock-on effect to everything. But some sectors which are not really impacted by the pound end up going up immediately, because I would expect the impact to go slowly into the economy, but everything shoot up at the same time. When it is lifted, everything is lifted. But you see the impact, like if you go and import good based on the increase in the inflation, you would expect those prices to be up. But the inventories which were already there, it shouldn't be. I don't know, it's something I need to understand. I know there is a logic to it. But,
in economics, we call that arbitrage. So basically, in an economy, of course, it's hard to conceive a policy that affects all economic agents equally.
Yep.
So you could come up with a policy, and that policy will hurt Mr. X more than Mr. Y.
Yep.
Right, or it will benefit Mr. X more than Mr. Y. But then, if there is no way of stopping Mr. Y from losing out more than Mr. X, then you're just creating a situation where the people who are not even affected by the policy themselves, would want to take advantage of the situation and benefit. So it's true, like if we're talking about inventories, right? So businesses usually buy things in bulk, and then they store some items, and then they sell others. with the hope of selling, whatever they bought previously, in the future. That's essentially what happens.
Mm-hmm.
But then, if you're looking at the prices for those inventories, then you're talking about prices, in the past. So if you're looking at what is happening right now in South Sudan, where the pound has depreciated relative to US dollar, so you have businesses that bought inventory a couple of weeks ago before the pound weakened against the dollar.
Mm-hmm.
But then because of what's happening in the market, and because we don't have a way of stopping those guys from increasing their prices,
so there is no consumer protection per se.
There is no consumer protection.
Okay.
There's no consumer protection. So those guys are just taking advantage of what is happening in the in the market, and they just want to benefit, even when they are not directly affected by by the weakening of the pound.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one problem. That's one problem that we have in the country, and that's one thing that is also contributing to these rampant increases in prices. Right? Like we have no way of telling who is losing from the fact that the pound has loss of value and who is not. So all agents in the market are increasing their prices.
Yep.
And that is what it is. I mean, in economics, that's not a bad thing. Like we agree with the fact that someone has to lose and someone has to benefit, so long as the benefits somehow outweigh the losses.
Yep.
But I don't know in South Sudan. I don't know if the benefit of the people that are taking advantage of the situation far outweigh the losses of the regular people that have just lost out because the pound has lost value. Now, let me briefly answer.
Answer the question from Majung Kurkany.
The question.
The legal tender, the
difference
is...
He was asking about the legal tender and the pound being a promissory note.
Yep.
Now, in developed countries, or even in third world countries, currencies are basically legal tenders. So a legal tender is, you can think about it as a coin or a note that has to be accepted by someone, as a means of payment.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have an item as Mr. Abject in Australia, and you are selling that item, or you are selling a service, I can come there and we talk and we agree on a price, and I have to pay you in Australian dollars. It is a legal tender in Australia. Like, you cannot refuse payment in Australian dollars. So in terms of the pound being a
promissory note,
being a legal tender or not, I think it is, or it was meant to be a legal tender. So if you have a debt in the country, in South Sudan, or if you want to purchase a good or a service, then the pound will be accepted within the borders of South Sudan as a means of payment. Now, a promissory note is a little bit different from a legal tender. So a promissory note is, you can think about it as a financial instrument. So let's say I want to borrow something from you.
Okay.
As a debt. Or I want to buy something from you and I'm not paying right now. Right. So what I can do as Niall is I can write, a document. It's a legal document, it's a contract, basically, that says that, I, Mr. Niall Kuch, promises to pay Abject, X amount of money in, Australian dollar or whatever currency we've agreed on this particular day, like everything is included in that promissory note, and then you have it. I issue it to you, and then I take the good, or I get the service that you are rendering, and then upon maturity, you will expect the payment because in that note I've said that I will pay a Jack X amount of money on date Y.
Yep.
And then you go with it. On date Y, you'll be expecting your money, and if I do not, then I'm legally liable to basically execute that contract. And there are usually penalties, interest or whatever that are included in that. So, looking at those definitions, I want to agree that the South Sudanese pound is a legal tender within the boundaries of our country. It is a legal tender. I think it is not a promissory note. So promissory note is more of a financial instrument or a legal contract that two parties have to enter into. It's like a debt. Basically, I acknowledge that I have your debt, and I'll pay you this sum of money on this day.
Yeah. I just to add on what you said, Dr. Nial, and we in mining we deal with a lot of contracts and bills and these things. So yeah, the promissory is moved toward a arbitrage system kind of. So and it become more a little bit complicated in that. But South Sudan is not really in that space. So I don't know why they say so, because I'm not seeing any government bond in the market. Actually, there's no market. Actually, there's no stock market, financial market. So it is so sad. But that is we are growing. It will come. We will make it. We are South Sudanese. We'll make it happen. But it's not there. So I hope that Mr. Majuk Kurkanj has got the answer. And if he's not still watching, then you'll get it after that. All right, I was going to say, look, thanks for coming in short notice, and I think the thing of economy is something we need to really talked about, and people to be educated. Our program, Know Your Expert, is about educating people, Dr. Nial, and I would want you to get prepared. And we'll be running series on the economy. See, even things like wrestling. I've been very curious, and there was a young man who expressed interest. I said, we need to study it. You see, now today there's a huge wrestling happening in Cuba. It is like a sport. It is a sector itself. It generates an economic activity. If you go around Chirkat and the whole of Cuba today, shops are very busy, restaurants are very busy. The impact of that could be major. This could be a real master student thesis here. Open PhD. The cultural activity.
Exactly. So
yeah. So those are the things we cannot.
We are not fully harnessing the economic potential of our country, right? So as I mentioned earlier, we only relying on oil revenue, but South Sudan is not about just oil. Right? So you could design for example, like if we want the government to get revenue, there are a lot of ways that we could do that. So I know already we have the income tax, for example, that is being collected. But then the problem we have with that is, there are few people in the formal sector, right? Because it's very hard to tax the informal economy. So let's say if I have a plot of land today in Juba or Bor, and I invite someone to come and let's say help me to fix the poles, or let's say to dig like a latrine or something in my compound, and I pay him whatever amount of pounds, that is not going to be taxed. So it's the informal economy.
Yep.
Right. So there are a lot of problems with the income tax system right now in the country because a lot of people work in the informal sector. Like people that are selling fish at at roadside in Shirkat, for example. I don't think they are being taxed optimally, right? So we really need to sit down, as a country and figure out a way to generate revenues. So in economics, we say broaden the tax base. So, like involve other people that are not being captured right now by the tax policy. And it could be something complicated like what we have here in the West, or it could be something so basic. Let's say you go to the village, you go to the chief, and then you ask the chief, how many people do you have, or how many heads of cattle, and you tax based on the number of cows that Mr. X or Y has. Now someone might misquote me and say, "Oh, that's going to make people miserable." But a good tax system doesn't have to be burdensome.
Yeah.
Right. Like it doesn't have to be exploitative. It doesn't have to make people suffer. You can. The main problem with tax system is basically compliance. So a good tax system is a system that encourages people to comply, right? So if we want to encourage compliance with the tax system, we can make it very affordable. So we can go to a village and say, okay, so and so has 100 cows, so we're going to be taking one cow per year. That's not a lot. Or we will be taking one goat per year, and we sell it to the national treasury, right? Things like property taxes. I don't think we have them in South Sudan. But those are the things that we need to implement. We look at people that legally own, plots of land or pieces of land.
Yeah.
And we estimate, the economic activity that they do and the revenue that they generate from that plot of land. And then we say, okay, every year you'll be sending us, 1% or 2% of this amount of money that you generate from your plot of land. It doesn't have to be 40% or 50%. We don't want people to suffer. Just make it, first of all, what we need to do right now is to make people compliant, to make people love, the idea of giving back to their country. Good. And of course, that's going to be hard to achieve if there is no accountability on the government side. People like to see their taxes working for them. I mean, if you ask an Australian or a Canadian, if you ask them why they pay taxes, they will tell you that because the government will use the money to build roads and hospitals, schools, and all that. They will mention all of that. If the people cannot see their taxes being translated into beneficial services, then they will not comply with that tax system.
Yep, absolutely.
So
absolutely.
We need to create a policy that encourages people to pay, like a policy that is not cumbersome, it's not expensive, it's not punitive. That's one thing. But we also need to have a way of translating these taxes into tangible, things that people can see. So roads, hospitals, bridges, name it. Taxpayers need to see that.
Dr. Niall, I think...
and that is the political side that I said before. Like it's the political side, but on the economic side, you could design a simple thing. Like go to the chief, get the number of people that live there. If they have zero assets, tax them zero. If they have, whatever they have, then just take something small. Yeah. And then we're done.
Absolutely. Yeah. Dear viewers, we are talking economics here with Dr. Niall. Is an economist by profession and is working with the government, with the Canadian Treasury. So he's someone practicing in the field. As someone who has this and as a member of FPD Institute the same as Dr. Nial. Our aims is to educate the public and you make informed decisions. We are not here to put blame on any policies or anything. And that's why Dr. Nial is talking fully what each activity mean from economic sense. We are not putting out any policy. So we are not saying go and tag them. Neither are we saying so and so should not be taxed. We are just being objective because we are in the field and we are professional and expert in our own right. The same way I could talk about mineral, I will talk about them in a way that is objective and it make logical sense to you, and it is educational that you learn. So I hope the listener, those who are going to watch the video, will learn few things. But Dr. Niall, one thing which I want you to talk about next time. In 1970s, 1971, 72 there, Canada fixed currency. It had floated currency, but then it fixed it again because it went through few difficulties. And at that point, when it fixed it, I think it was the time when the American removed the gold as a backing of a fiat currency of the Greenberg. And the floating of currencies, I personally, from mineral economic perspective, because the way I see the currency risk and the currency and the storage of value in using things like gold as a backup. And if you see the way the world economy is going and currency and some countries are filing up gold, I think it will be something very interesting too, because we do this with intention that the policymakers will listen to us and they will learn one or two things. Whether they will give credit or not, that is not the problem. Ours is to do a patriotic duty, to give the knowledge and information to the public. And the honest policymakers will say, you know what, Dr. Nyala said it on this day, and they will cite it your speech. The dishonest one will say, I came up with this. You know those things. We call it the dishonesty in academia. It is worst. It should affect your conscience. Ourselves, it affect your conscience. So we cite it, everything. We give credit to where it due. People in academia. Exactly. But in Africa, most of the people run away with other people's intellectual property and call it that. But what I want to say is this. I would want to let you go and prepare for that. And next Saturday, we'll give you fully an hour yourself to do this. And we'll do it in form of a lecture. And it will be a discussion and people can ask questions. Being a high-level discussion, sometimes you give out the information. It takes people time to digest and come up with proper question. But and we thank people who try to make this show educational by asking question. We know people ask question in order to help others to understand. Sometimes I will do probing question to help our people to understand, because our aim is to teach people, share the knowledge. That is it. So we research, we engage, and we reconnect with our country. That are the standing pillars of the FED Institute. So thanks for coming in short notice. But I just wanted to do an introductory today, and we'll continue with the series of the economics, because I believe without the economic, yes, of course, peace and tranquility have to be there for the pre-market to operate, which is another problem, understanding of the word pre-market. It's not free when you are getting a contract due to your uncle in the government. That's not free. Yeah. But anyway, so yeah, so thanks for coming. But maybe if you can say one or last things to the audience, and then we will close the show.
Yeah. So I don't have a lot of stuff to say. In summary, what I would like to throw out there is that we have a country called South Sudan, and we all belong to that country. So what we should be doing is to brainstorm as we are doing right now, and try to understand why we have the issues that we have, and throw out some of the solutions that we could use to solve those problems. And it touches upon everyone. Like, you don't have to be an economist to provide a solution, because we have other problems, in other fields that also require your expertise.
Yep.
For example, you are an expert in in mining and mineral engineering. So we have that sector, and it's not, at the moment, it's not being exploited to the maximum. So we require your experience, in that sector to help us jumpstart, that potential, source of revenue for our country. It could also be fisheries. It could be agriculture. It could be health, transportation. So there is space for everyone.
Absolutely.
And what I'm hoping to see, in the very near future is, a forum where we have people from all walks of life, including even people that have not gone to school, like like our traditional leaders, to talk about the social aspect of things, because, culture is also an element that can affect the economic atmosphere of the country. And when I talk about culture, for example, in Jonglei State, dowry payment is a contentious issue. So
yes.
that can feed into, the economic muscle of, young people in that particular area. So this should be a forum that, like every once in a while we have someone from, a different field telling us about their experiences and, where we should be going forward as a country. So I'm happy that I was part of today's show, and hopefully next week we can talk more about the economic problems that we have, some of the solutions that we can provide to address those problems, and we can also hear from our viewers, what if they have any questions or they have any suggestions. It's a very open forum for everybody. So thank you, Mr. Aja, for hosting me, and I hope to hear from you next week.
Yeah, definitely. We will talk outside this to discuss on the next discussion. So, but thanks for coming, and look, we will, what you said about the forum, FED Institute, try to open that space for informed discussions. We want to drive people away from just subjective opinion and emotional kind of a reaction. We don't want that. We want people to talk from the well-informed position where we make impact. And what you said is correct, absolutely. We are trying to create a show now which will be more not more inclusive for those who may have difficulties in the language. Because I think English, some of the theories we have studied with practice are in English, but we'll try to create where we could share. So we are looking to be more diverse by having someone in Arabic, someone in Dinka, someone in Nuer, at least the major languages of South Sudan. Well, FED Institute has a lot of interest. We are the first generation of immigrants to immigrate. So we still have that strong connection with our land. So what you said is absolutely in the right place, is a plan, and we will be engaging more and more with the public. In the near future, this show will be hosted by different people, not me. We are just at that stage where we want to make sure we are engaging out there, and people know we are here for the greater good of the nation and for the society. And what we put out actually can benefit any Africans and the whole nation, the continent. So this kind of a show in English will be more high-level intellectual, but then we'll create this where everyone who may have difficulties participating in English may participate in our various dialect, because language is not a medium of knowledge. So people can still express the same ideas in Dinka, in Nuer, and in Juba Arabic, particularly. So we'll create shows like that, and it will always come after the English. So we'll make English brief, and then we'll create that show.
We should we should open it to to people, whatever medium of expression you want to use, we would be fine with it. So if someone wants to speak Dinka or Nuer or any other language, Arabic, name it, we will be okay with it. We just need to find a translator at some point to
translate. Okay.
The rest of the
okay. Good.
So, yeah. So looking forward to talking to you next week, Mr. Ajak.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Nyal. Thanks. Bye.
All right. Thank you.
Dear listener, that was the, Dr. Nyal Kunchul. He's an economist, and he is based in Canada. He is a member of FPD Institute, and in FPD Institute, our philosophy is to share knowledge, share a technical know-how with our people, get information, synthesize it, bring it to you in a way that it would impact people understanding. So now, one last thing, as our tradition, we always look at South Sudan in the media. Let's look at it. What is dominating this week is the extension of the interim period. The extension of the transitional government by 2 years. That is reported widely. It's reported by the Middle East North African newspaper. You can see President Kiir there signing the document. And then it was also reported by the Nationwide. And we mentioned the question of poverty and turmoil, South Sudan post-independent history. This was Daily Monitor newspaper. And then hospital to bandits, African Top News. This one's here was in South Africa, where the bandits have taken over the hospitals. You can see the police officer there as I'm pointing. President Kiir, the firing of the finance minister, they has been fired, has been relieved from his jobs. It has also gone into the news. It actually was reported by Reuters. It is the major European newspaper. It has reported the relief of the finance minister and the central bank governor. So majority of people in Europe are reading about it today. So, and then the issue of Taiwan and China is a bit concerning, and it's reported by the Diplomat newspaper and the transitional government. And then the discussion of the stakeholders like the UN and the two leaders, the first vice presidents, Dr. Riek Machar and His Excellency Gerald Kiir Mayardit, talking about election 2024, the extension of the transitional government. So those are in the news. This news is up to the 4th. We always capture things. So what have we done? How do we get this news? And we encourage people to subscribe to our newsletter. But first, go to FPD Institute. So it is peaceforum.press. And you go to the news. We have built a machine learning algorithms. This is how we get the news. Get it? First, we have built a machine learning algorithm, which I took time to build together in order to pull the news, because it takes time to search all over the internet. Look there, Google this, Google that. No, We want anything about South Sudan, any news, wherever it is reported internationally. As long as it is on the internet, social media, we'll get it. So we always pull it in. So make this your destination for news. Always go to FPD Institute, which is peaceforum.press, and go to the news, this page here. If you go to that page on the news, it will open as one big screen called news. Click on it and it will open all the news. We have here over how many? I think over 100 articles that were reported in the last few days. It looked back up to August the 2nd. So it's like 3 days ago. So anything about South Sudan, we have it here. We have it. Uh, uh, so it is something that we think. And then the basketball stars talking. So what we are saying here, don't go and search everywhere. We have done the hard yard. Come and get the news. So, friends, have another good week. This is Kayamba FM, hosting FPD Institute. I'm a Jack Duanya Jack. We are here to educate, to inform, engage, and reconnect with our country. We are a forum that does not engage in any politics. We are educational forum. Our program is educational, no politics. Yes, some of the learning sometimes may bring up things, but we are not here to involve in anything that will bash anybody. We are not here to criticize or bash anybody. We are here to give out information, take it, understand it, and make use of the information. That is our aim, and that remains to be our resolve, is to ensure we educate, we engage, and we reconnect with our people, our country. That is our aim. That is the aim of the FPD Institute. Actually, that is the aim of Kayamba FM, which is hosting the FPD Institute every Saturday. FPD Institute is a group of experts made up of economists, mining engineers, geologists, social scientists, business, small business, enterprise management expert, policymakers, educationists, people in health sector, health expert, name them. We are a big group of expert, professional, and intellectuals, and they are working in their various disciplines. So they want to share what they have learned with you. So feel free to participate. We'll open up the show to everybody. Nobody is segregated or discriminated. All South Sudanese are in FED Institute. Have a good week and thank you. Bye-bye. Thanks for tuning in. Share the video and continue to share the video, please. Thank you.